of tech firms are working on the future of chatbots, an AI platform trained to engage in conversation, and one in particular has gone viral. It's called Chat GPT from the firm OpenAI, and more than 1 million people have had a play with it since it launched.
Practitioners are surprised by how quickly these modern systems are developing, and some of them are starting to think we may have systems as smart as humans in as little as 10 years, which is sooner than most people thought previously.
As platforms like Chat GPT develop, what more could they be capable of? Maybe they'll replace internet search engines. Maybe they'll generate content for websites. Maybe they could even write reports like this.
Yeah, so are you excited to talk about Chat GPT? I'm excited. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that is what we're talking about.
Do you have a chance to use the platform? I actually subscribe to the $20 a month plan.
No, because the thing is, they take their service offline periodically.
Well, that's because of the overwhelming amount of users. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not like, it's online constantly.
Well, yeah, obviously, but it will be online constantly for people who pay $20 a month.
Yeah, but I didn't pay the $20 a month.
You're like, I use it today. Oh, I can't. I use it tomorrow. Yeah, there's a lot of news about ChatGPT, especially. So Kevin O'Reilly was thinking about investing into it, $100 million, I guess, for the first round, because Microsoft also did an investment. But he said right now they don't have a real business model. The only business model is the $20 a month.
Yeah.
So, but they implemented that pretty quickly, because I think I've been using ChatGPT for 3 weeks, and within the second week they're like, boom, $20 a month.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because they started back in November, right, of last 2022, and then but the thing is they grew to like 1 million users in a month, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then in January they grew to 100 million.
Yeah, it's like in less than 2 months. I guess that's how viral some things can go, and that's why I can understand why it keeps crashing. I mean, what have you used it for so far?
I've used it for I've only used it for like a single day.
Okay, my 1 day of experience with ChatGPT. Follow Jeremy Lum.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like I didn't have anything at the moment to use it for.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's incredible the amount of different techniques that you can do, and they call them prompts now. I suppose.
So that's the thing. It's like GPT, AI. It's not as intuitive as you see in movies.
Right.
But I mean, it is still useful. Like, I can imagine if I was a student, you could totally just ask it to write you a paper on the Civil War, for example. Actually, I did do that as an example, where I was like pretending, okay, maybe I'm a student and I have a paper due on the Civil War. So I was like giving it prompts, right? Like, your prompts, like, oh, this is focusing on like the Battle of Gettysburg, and like this is we're talking from the side of the Union or the Confederate. Write me a paper on how impactful this was on people's lives or something like that. I don't know. And it wrote me a very long essay.
Well, and that's right. You said about Robot Nation, right? You have to be very specific about your parameters. So you can say, like, for my example, right, I had to write a chapter book, right? Like 3 chapters, fantasy. And I'll send the clips over to Rex. But when I was recording it, like, I went down a very specific path where originally it was like, hey, create me a schedule. So I had ChatGPT create me a schedule based off of a full-time job. I was like, if I had a full-time job, what would you recommend my schedule would be, right? So it recommended 45 minutes a night, and then 1 hour on Saturday, and then 2 hours on Sunday, and in the morning and the evening. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Then I cut down the time to 2 months, right? It's like, oh, what if I had to write this in 2 months? And then it gave me a new schedule. And then I said, okay, well, what information do you need if you wrote this story for me. And then it said, oh, I need these 5 questions answered. I answered those questions and I asked it to write chapter 1. Boom, like in an instant, it wrote chapter 1. There was things that I didn't like about the first chapter, so I adjusted it. Like it had recommended a treasure map. 2 people go on a treasure hunt and they use a map. I'm like, oh, that's so cliche. I was like, can we use something else? And then it actually changed into like more of an Indiana Jones type of esque story. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And it was writing the story and I was just enjoying reading the story. I was like, I enjoy the story. And I was like, oh, I could actually, pen this as my own, because it's not like anyone else knows that I had not written all of this stuff, because
I mean, it's akin to like having a ghostwriter at that point then, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, because the thing is, you still have to give the ideas
guidance.
Yeah.
So I went through that whole spiel. I asked it to do mind maps. I asked it to do summaries. I asked it to pull all the information in a specific subject. So, even for the physics podcast, actually, we should do it for this. Be like, plan out our whole podcast. And I want to talk about like the phase. Well, and I feel like, you remember when it was saying that data from 2010 was what it used most of its information from?
No,
I don't know if that's the case anymore, because I was able to ask it pretty current information, and it was able to spit back a lot of like modern day answers. Like Among Us, I was asking it about Among Us, the video game itself, and dude, it's like I felt it more than ever that AI is gonna take over. I was like, easy. I don't even need to use my brain anymore. Just let the robots do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the danger of it, though, right? It's like you're gonna become reliant on AI to do everything, all the menial tasks for us.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm not against it. I kind of like it. I don't foresee it being a big problem for me. I think it depends on the people who are going to either embrace it or, not go with it. But do you foresee it being the Google killer that a lot of people potentially see it as?
No, I don't think so.
Really? I've been
okay. Here's the thing. Most people use Google. I feel like most people use Google search engine more out of convenience than how good it is.
Oh, what do you mean?
Like, the thing is, okay, so like you have Google, you have Bing, right? For example, they're both pretty much exactly the same at this point.
Yeah, at this point.
But most people still use Google, even though Bing, is just as good. Why is that?
Convenience. It was faster. You're used to typing in Google every morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Chrome is my Google.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm going to Google something. I don't think Chat GPT is necessarily going to, I feel like it's not going to necessarily change that fact. Because most people's browsers, they're already set to Google, right?
Yeah, I see that. I mean,
still
use Google
for the people who are like very into cutting edge technology, or the trendsetter stuff like that. Yeah, obviously I'll see them diving into Bing, using Chat GPT being integrated into Bing, but for the most people, I don't necessarily think I can't really see them like saying, hey, you know what, instead of Google, I'm just gonna switch to Bing.
Yeah, well, okay, so what about this? I mean, let's say that Bing integrates Chat GPT into its entire search algorithm, and essentially Bing had purchased out Chat GPT and created that kind of interface where it's just like bing.com, and then of course your prompts will lead you to Chat GPT, where it has your prompts, it has all your saved searches. Like, honestly, that's what I love about it. Like, I can always go back to my saved commands and then kind of expound upon it. I'm like, oh, okay, hey, remember this? Can we go over this? Can we talk about this? I mean, I feel like it's better than like a personal assistant where I can talk to them and like, do a dialogue back and forth and figure out like details. where I need to flesh out like an idea even further. And I mean it's like perfect for me. It's like a note taker, it's a note expander, it provides me insight. It almost like tells me what to do as an assistant. I'd be like, oh, tell me what I should do this week, and boom, lists out my whole schedule. So I mean, of course you have to feed that information into it, but once the brain remembers that, the AI brain remembers that, it's like it like knows me inside and out right now. Robots.
Doesn't Google search engines already kind of know that already about you?
I mean, kind of. I mean, but that's behind the scenes. Like, this is a little bit more transparent. I feel that with the transparency and me feeling like I'm in control of my life and my search, like my prompt answers, gives me a little bit more control versus like Google will just feed me whatever's in the first page and I have to listen. I'm like, okay, well, whatever you spit out as results, I'll follow suit and I'll take it as law, right? For certain things. I mean, of course, it still requires some discernment. There's some information that's not accurate. Like this morning, it took me almost like 2 hours to figure out this whole encoding thing with this editing. Supposedly, when you record video from your phone and it's an MOV file and you upload it, you try to put it into Premiere, you're not able to, like the frame rates are off. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, so I had to do this whole export thing, but that took me like a whole hour to search, where I feel like if I ask Chat GPT, oh, can you encode this, 60 frames per second, upload the file, and then it does it, then, does its job, takes over.
Its job, does it for you.
Done deal. Yeah. It saved me an hour of work where this robot saved me like, 45 minutes, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, that's where I see kind of the future heading toward. But I mean, well,
yeah, I mean, the future definitely is going to be heading towards like that smart, that smart assistants. But because the thing is, like, it's not just Bing; everyone's doing it now. All right, Google's also having to implement their own. The
Bard.
I think
is it Bard? You're talking about Bard?
Oh, for Google, I don't know what it's called. It's going to be like another
streaming wars, like we talked about. If you click on the link over here.
This is going to be the AI wars.
Yeah, the AI wars, the streaming wars, all these digital warfare that's going on. But this is all happening in the United States. Well, not Baidu. Baidu's a little bit different.
No, it's happening worldwide. Yeah.
But I mean, for me, like when it comes to the streaming wars, that's all US, right? Specifically. I feel
no, streaming is international.
And I mean, well, I guess for market share, but there's no big players outside of like Viki or Rakuten that actually provide content. I mean, well, I guess on the platform specifically, like Netflix has German shows, right, and Korean shows, but I mean, there's no distributor, I guess, so to speak, that like there's no company outside of the US that has these streaming platforms, do they?
Wait, say that again.
So I'm saying, like, so all the companies that own all the streaming companies, they're all US based, right?
No, well, you mean all the streaming platforms? There's not every single streaming platform is in the United States, but the biggest ones are in.
Yeah, in the United States. But for AI, that's excluding like the Chinese ones. Like, what are some Chinese streaming sites?
I don't even know what they're called, but they have their own.
Yeah, I guess they would.
And if you're talking size, I mean, China's size is comparable.
Yeah, gigantic, right? It's like I feel like that's where most of movies, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, right? I just watched it this weekend. Like, even though domestically it made $104 million or $120 million with the 4-day weekend, internationally it made even more than what we produced in the United States, and it's because the sheer population is so much more higher for people to watch movies. It makes me think like, oh, maybe I should just do a Chinese movie. It'd be so much easier, and then just make so much more money. It's like,
do a Chinese movie? What do you mean?
Chinese movie, Chinese American? I don't know, like a movie that people in China would like.
Oh, no,
I don't know what kind of movie they would like, but
exactly.
But I think these wars are going to be very interesting with AI. I mean, I think Chat GPT is going to be the leader for a good while, similar to like Netflix. And then, of course, hope. I don't know if something will come through. It's like it kind of reminds me of when YouTube came out, and then there's Vimeo, and then there's other things. Or when remember when Groupon came out, and then there's all these like group deal sites like Living Social, and there's a whole bunch of them. Like, do you think there is going to be any competitor that could beat out ChatGPT right now?
Right now, as in like at this very moment, or now in like in the near future?
It's in the near future, I guess, of what you've seen or what you've heard.
I mean, I honestly believe that if anything, Google could definitely compete, just because they have they have the resources.
Yeah, and the developers, yeah.
And the developers, yeah.
We can create robots, no problem. This kind of reminds me of when, Elon Musk had created the robots, the physical robots, and how all it did was wave hi, and then that was it. Like, oops.
Yeah, whatever happened to that?
I'm pretty sure it's on the back burner. I think at the end of the day, there's only so much pioneering that a person can do. I mean, Elon Musk is smart, but at the end of the day, I think he's kind of like maybe overwhelmed, or he has too much on his plate, and things seem to be falling. Like Twitter, I think Twitter is a big distraction for him, where he's sapping up his resources, and that's why he's kind of fallen a little bit off the map. Like he's having to do too much damage control, and like save a sinking ship basically with all his money.
Well, he's on a sinking ship that he sank even further.
Yeah, exactly. And right, you were saying, I remember in one of our podcasts a while back that he had to start paying what he owes to Twitter pretty soon.
No, he has to pay off his loans to the bank.
Oh, and which have $1 billion in interest a year, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, talk about getting such a huge burden. You know what I mean? For something, I don't know what his play was to get Twitter, and maybe it was just a flex. Like, oh, I'm gonna flex, and then he kind of got in over his head.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he tried to back out of the deal initially.
Yeah, I think he got buyer's remorse. He's like, I'm sorry about this, but I don't want it anymore. Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy. So you're gonna try to use ChatGPT a little bit more, or because I use it every day now.
I don't know. Like, I don't really know what I could use it for, honestly. It's not something I could think of as like a part of my daily life at the moment.
Really? I use it for everything. I look it for looking up recipes. I look it for like creating like study schedules. I do it for, mostly I guess like personal development stuff. Maybe that's why, because like people with personal development or people who write a lot of content, I think most likely need, like students, right? Students are like, oh, I see a huge benefit of this. I feel like maybe students is the gateway into kind of like relying on Chat GPT, and then from there, as they become adults, it's going to be like, oh, let me use this. The funny thing is, there was this article, you got to see it, about a flight was delayed for 6 hours, and they had asked ChatGPT to write a passive-aggressive email to the airlines, and then all they did was add in two parameters. One was the 6-hour wait, and then 3 hours to get into the lounge. And dude, it wrote like, when I was reading, I was like, it sounded like a perfect, like textbook perfect letter. And then they sent it out, and it got, the video itself got viral.
Wow.
Almost 2 million views. So I mean, like, people have been using it for all sorts of things, which, I mean, and she was Chinese. Her name was Miss Lao, Lua. How do you pronounce Lua? Lao. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got. I mean, I've been kind of following it, tracking it for a
But
good
have you?
time.
I mean, have you run into like any issues with it? Like, for example, the technology isn't perfect right now, right? Like, because I know it tends to sometimes give out false answers because either because it's based off old information, or I think there are some people saying it tends to hallucinate.
Hallucinate, like people hallucinations. So there was two examples that I'm aware of. One was for me personally, there's certain things that especially when you ask it, like, because when I said, oh, can you write a chapter, it does clarify and say, I am an AI bot. I cannot write this for you, but I can provide content. So it's very specific in that manner, which, kind of took me for aback a little bit, because I'm like, oh, it's very, very specific, right? Like if I said, oh, tell me how to do this, and it talks about morality, it talks about ethics. Like, I was reading actually, because I shared my login with someone. I don't know if that, hopefully the Chat GPT guys don't get mad at me, because you know how Netflix is going to be cracking on those passwords. I I had shared my password, and I was reading his responses, and like he was asking for ideas of a story, but the problem is that he was talking about it like it was in present tense, or like it was happening in real life. And like ChatGPT is like, oh, that's not ethical, you shouldn't be able to do this. But it couldn't discern between, like, if it was talking to the AI bot about like fiction, or if it was talking about reality. And I think that could be a very big problem, because the questions he's asking is like, oh, I am a student, and I'm in the underworld, and like this is a threat. Like, I got to show it to you later, or maybe I'll do some screen recordings. But I was surprised at the responses that it got, where ChatGPT seemed very disturbed and upset about it, and then like blatantly said like this is not ethical. So there was that response. And my mom had told me about an article where the person was using ChatGPT for about an hour, and over time, or over the responses that he was getting, and what he was talking about, like prompting ChatGPT, at the end, ChatGPT had recommended that he gets a divorce. I know, right? Like, that would be like, it's like, oh, based off of all the information, I recommend that you get a divorce. I mean, I'm kind of summarizing it, but my mom was alarmed. She's like, oh, I wouldn't want to encounter that type of answer and take it for face value, right? So I think same thing with fake news. You consume, or you take in the information that you're given, and then you either you take it as advice, or you leave it alone. But it doesn't help to plant those seeds in your head when you're thinking about what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, in talking about using your fake news, I think one of the biggest concerns I saw a lot of people talk about was that ChatGPT could be used to create like false automated comments.
False, right. Yeah, it's like, oh, tell me the best way to respond to this, right?
Right.
And it comes up with something, and you just copy and paste it, and you're on your way, which could be very scary. Terry, scary.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think right now is the hard part is sorting between like what's truthful and what's fiction. Yeah,
I mean, and robots, I don't think can discern between the two. I think about it a lot. Like when you're dreaming, and you have reality versus like the dream. I'm like, oh dang, that was so real. Like, would that be something that a AI bot could discern between? Like, it's like, oh hey, I had a dream, that I was choking XYZ, and then it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing it. And then all of a sudden ChatGPT reports you to the police, and then I'm like, no, it was a dream. And then it's like, well, ChatGPT said otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, how do you train a robot to
understand
humans? Yeah,
emotion, all the, and even just lying, right? It's like robots, I guess, innately don't have it in themselves to lie, but humans can lie all the time, and tell Chat GPT what it wants to, so it gets the result that you want, right? And that's kind of outsmarting the robots. I mean, I guess in so many ways. And that's the hard thing too, because when you rely on human memory, people's memory normally is flawed. So let's say that you say something to ChatGPT, you change, right, over 5-10 years, and your answer is different. It becomes very contradictory to what you originally were. And I think robots are like, oh, this is a contradiction. Hunt the humans, right? Hunt the humans.
Someone should Someone should have Chat GPT read like every single history book out there.
About every you love history. This guy's all like, read all the history books to me.
No, just read it and then see if all of it makes sense when you put it all together.
Oh, probably. It's like, wait a minute. In 1960, this didn't happen, and this supposedly happened, and nothing. There's no record or documentation of this. But like a blog could be something that has information about a person, and then they're like, oh, this is very contradictory information. I wonder what it would do in the case of contradictory information. That'd be interesting. Cannot compute, it blows up.
Cannot compute, must destroy humans.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, and part of me wants to jump on a different tangent with the whole Justin Roiland situation, but I guess we got to save that for another time because Justin Roiland's in some hot water. Sometimes I don't understand cancel culture too much. Maybe Chat GPT could help us with that.
I don't think so.
Probably not, because cancel culture is very emotional, but it's surprising to me how someone's life could be so extremely exposed only in a matter of days, right? Because he had released, I think, Solar Opposite.
Okay, well, anyway, we're going off track here.
Okay. Yeah, and that's all the time we have today. Let us know what you think about ChatGPT. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
It's gonna destroy us all.
The robots destroy us all.
The robots gonna take over the world.
Destroy this podcast. Destroy it. Blow it up.